Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Brent Kramer. I'm one of the anterior segment surgeons at Vance Thompson Vision. I work in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Alexandria, Minnesota, and I'm joined by a couple of our other docs here.
Hi, I'm Doug Wallen. I'm optometrist at our Sioux Falls, South Dakota location.
And I'm Daniel Trevine. I'm an ophthalmologist in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I'm excited to be here on this podcast with you guys.
I love it. All right, so today we are going to talk all things, maybe not all things, but most things LASIK. And to get things rolling, I will just share the results. This is the first time being shared the results of our internal survey. So I surveyed the doctors at Vance Thompson Vision. We had 27 of our docs reply to this survey. 21 of them had refractive error. Of the 21 that had refractive error,
Do you want me to
14.
drum roll? Drum roll? Yeah.
All right. 14 of them had refractive procedures. 9 had LASIK, 2 had ICLs, 3 had PRK, and 1 has already had an RLE, a refractive lens exchange. 100% of the people that had a refractive procedure said that they would have it again. 100% of the doctors would recommend a refractive procedure to a family member, assuming they were a good candidate. What about the 7 that have refractive error that have not had a refractive procedure? A speckling of answers. A couple of them are hyperopes that still see excellent without any corrective error. We had a little bit of early keratoconus, a little bit of dry eye symptoms, and then what was the other one? That's it, dry eye. Dry eye and keratoconus are kind of the medical reasons. So otherwise, everybody else, if they were good, essentially, if you're a good candidate, our doctors, would have LASIK or a refractive procedure or would recommend it to a family member. And this kind of aligns with a study that was done that showed, they surveyed a bunch of different eye doctors, and a lot of them at a higher rate than the people in the community were getting LASIK and also were recommending LASIK to family members. Doug, Dan, have you guys had LASIK, PRK, refractive surgery at all?
I had LASIK done December 23rd of 1996, believe it or not. So it'll be 28 years ago on this December. So I was a 650 in one eye, 6 1/4 in the other eye. We were in the FDA clinical trials of PRK and LASIK up until it was FDA approved in October of 95. It was approved up to 6. I was a half adopter and a quarter adopter more than that. And so I had to decide whether I wanted to do anything at that time or wait until we got expanded parameters. So I waited an extra year and then had it done. Blade microkeratome, and been 2015 ever since. I was 32 at the time. I'm 6'0" now, and I still have great 2015 distance vision, but I can't see a lick up close and need readers. So.
And I had PRK. I don't remember the date. I barely remember the year, but it feels like a long time ago. And I had a high prescription, thin residual stromal bed. So we went with PRK as opposed to LASIK. And I had a little too much astigmatism for an ICL back then. So I went with a PRK and I've been doing really good. Other than the first like 36 hours where I complained to my then girlfriend a lot. It's been amazing.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. So I love that. We're believers in what we're doing, which I think makes a lot of sense and probably why we're doing it. So let's kind of get into the meat of this. When we have patients in the door, that's interesting, Dan. You had PRK, Doug, you had LASIK. In that survey, we saw folks ICL, someone had an RLE. Um, you know, we have a lot of different hammers at Vance Thompson Vision. We have all of the hammers at Vance Thompson Vision. So what's a good patient for LASIK for you guys? Someone that's coming in, who are you going to recommend LASIK versus some of the other refractive procedures, or maybe recommend nothing? Doug, do you want to start off?
Sure, you betcha. So my favorite LASIK candidates are those that are in their 20s to 30s. They have moderate refractive error. And I'm real comfortable myopia, hyperopia, astigmatism. I tend to get a little bit more uncomfortable as you go up into higher amounts of hyperopia because I really do think that there are some limits that your cornea runs into as you steepen it, probably more so than when you flatten it from an optical standpoint. And so I think sometimes people lose a little bit of their optical clarity when you really push it towards those extremes. But everybody pays attention to corneal thickness more so than they do corneal curvature. But I like those. I think because we have such good technology in the implant world, both from a phakic IOLs and refractive lens exchanges with the technology that we have now, I don't think that you really need to push either PRK or LASIK anymore. I think the options are there with going inside the eye and doing lens-based surgeries for people who are pushing those upper limits. So I love staying within the parameters of LASIK and not really pushing the cornea one way or the other. Too flat, too steep, too thin. You stay in that range, you're good. The diagnostic equipment now is so good at being able to help us determine those patients who really shouldn't have a flat made on their cornea or shouldn't have laser done to their cornea. And of course, we'll probably get into this a little bit of how much we prepare these patients beforehand from a dry eye standpoint and everything else. But that's my perfect LASIK candidate.
Yeah, and I love it. You know, everybody's not a nail to us. And to that point, one of the nurses I work with, she's actually a +5. And of course, she was undercorrected. She's wearing +3 contacts, so she's accommodating quite a bit. We marched her down, and at the end of the day, I said, "Hey, do you mind your contacts?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I don't mind it." And I was like, "I think contacts are probably your best option at this age, being a +5, +5.5 with some astigmatism." And so, I think when that early presbyopia sets in, I think slam dunk RLE. How young are you going for RLE in those high hyperopes?
Yeah, I think high hyperopes are really the hardest patient group for, a myope, really, we have such great options if they're not a candidate for LASIK or PRK because you're worried about corneal flattening, which, I've gotten a little bit even more conservative on what their residual Ks are because ICLs have gotten so good and we have toric options and we don't have to do a PI anymore. And so offering a ICL to really any myope is under 45 is really pretty doable. And so like if you're a myope under 45, we've got a great option for you. If you're a +3 or greater, then it gets a little bit tricky. If you're young, if you're for me, it's really below 35. I'm really nervous about it. If you're a +8 and you're 38, which I've done, I think those patients can be really, really happy if you do an RLE on them. They usually have got a very short eye. Their retina is nice and healthy. They're at low risk for, a retinal detachment with a short eye like that. I think those like +8s, +9s can do well with an RLE. But it's really at 35 is kind of when I start talking RLE. I haven't done one below 35. Doug, what are your thoughts?
I'm about right in there. I'm somewhere in that 35 to 40 range, and the reason is because they can accommodate so well, and they have their whole lifetime that it's really hard to push that extra amount of hyperopia. That I get really nervous with those 354 diopter hyperopes that are in their early to mid 30s because it's just you're steeping their cornea quite a bit. They really haven't experienced any presbyopic like factors, but you take a 39-year-old who's a +6, it's almost like they're presbyopic. They struggle at that level, and so it's much easier to go in and do a lens exchange, and they really feel the benefits of it. So yeah, it's those hyperopes. I like that idea of about 35 in those moderate myopes, and I kind of tell them you need to exhaust your There's so many good contact lens options also now with sclerals and everything, so that can be comfortable. So then I say to them, you need to exhaust your options contact lens wise first if you're a young moderate hyperope. And then if you exhaust those options and you get into your late 30s or early 40s, then there's a great option for you that's going to take care of you the rest of your life.
Yeah, I love that. That's probably where I land too. Mid 30s, pretty comfortable with that. And then also, it's a few things to factor in here. How hyperopic are they? Are they struggling with early presbyopia because they're, been accommodating for diopters and all of that stuff? So a lot of things to consider here. But that gets into the, you know, everybody's a little bit individual. And under different circumstances, I might go younger, right? Because boy, I can't imagine putting on a pair of +8 glasses. And if you can't tolerate contact lenses for whatever reason, but so yeah, I love that. So, when I think of a good LASIK candidate, I think of one, someone who's motivated to get out of their glasses and contacts, right? And so I want to see that somebody that, is a little bothered by glasses or contacts and for whatever reason wants to get out of them. Two, I'm looking at for LASIK, we kind of narrowed down on the hyperopia. I'm pretty comfortable going up to that +3 without really thinking too much about it. And of course, we cycloplege those patients to see, are they really a +3 or are they actually a +5 that's accommodating to a +3? But, a true +3, pretty comfortable, all the way up to about a -6 for me. Anything more than a -6, then I'm starting to think ICL, not always going with it. I still do the occasional -7 LASIK if it's the right circumstance. Maybe their Ks are steep. They got a nice thick cornea. And I think, hey, maybe I make their vision a little bit better. Or if, they have a little irregular astigmatism without any concern for ectasia, hey, maybe we could do a topo-guided treatment and give them better quality of vision with the LASIK. So I'll go up there. But, anywhere from that +3 to -6 is a pretty much slam dunk for me. And then for age-wise, that's to say I've done we've been talking. I've done RLEs down into the upper 30s, especially on those hyperopic patients. On the flip side, I've also done LASIK this year on a 53-year-old that's completely presbyopic. She said, well, I wear contacts and I'm already putting my cheaters in. I just don't tolerate my contacts anymore. And so you have the conversation about RLE and you lay everything out for them. And she ultimately went with LASIK and she loved it. And so you'll go up there, but usually I start having that lens conversation anywhere, 40 to 45 and above. I start having the conversation. And really anything above 50, and I'm looking at RLE these days, especially with the lens technology we have available.
Yeah, and with those, and I see a lot of the refractive consults for those patients in the late 40s and up to mid 50s. Like the 52-year-old example you had, and what you want to do, and a lot of times we'll do LASIK on if they have the right expectations. Sometimes they have the expectation that they want to eliminate glasses completely, and I've said, LASIK's not going to do that for you more than likely, but unless you're really good at monovision, but then you also have to plan to make sure you're not doing a whole ton of LASIK on their cornea and, like a 6.5 or 7 diopter LASIK at a 52-year-old where you're saying, 6, 7 years down the road, you're going to be dealing with cataract surgery. And are you going to limit what your options are as far as a diffractive multifocal down the road and things like that? So that's a tough discussion sometimes with those late 40s and early 50-year-olds. But on the flip side of that, I also like sometimes you have young patients. I see 38, 40-year-old patients that I think are, they're moderate myopes, maybe 4 diopter myopes that are really good candidates in everything that you look at, but they've bonked out of contact lenses. They've been going down every dry eye treatment known to man to try to get themselves comfortable, and they can't wear contacts anymore and they're in glasses, and they want to know what's the best thing I can do to correct my vision. And kind of the last thing I'm thinking is, I don't really want to do LASIK on you. And the nice thing is the ICL comes down to a -3. So you can have sometimes what would appear maybe to be a moderate myope that would be a good LASIK candidate, but we might even do an implant on that patient just so we don't increase the level of dryness and make it more difficult for them afterwards. So it's nice that these technologies now overlap each other so much so that you have those options there.
Love that, Doug. And yeah, I am thinking, on anybody, but especially that, 40-year-old patient that comes in, hey, I'm going to be doing your lens surgery here in the next 10 to 20 years, and I don't want to burn any bridges if I don't have to.